listeners, and welcome to Pop Screen, part of the Geek Show Podcast Network. We are the Geek Show's podcast dedicated to the good, the bad, and the preposterous of movies, either starring, about, or by pop stars. I'm your host, Graham Williamson. I'm a film critic for the Geek Show and Horrified.com, the British horror website. I also make films and write the in-label booklets for certain second-run DVD and Blu-ray releases. I've been joined this week by...
Hello, I'm Mark Harrison. I'm a writer and occasional quizmaster for Film Stories magazine and Vodzilla.co.
Now, Mark and I saw in 2021 by reviewing an insane Leos Carax movie on this very show, and we're seeing the year out by doing the exact same thing, only sparksier. The veteran art pop duo wrote the script and composed the soundtrack to Carax's latest movie, a lavish musical about Henry McHenry, a belligerent stand-up comedian played by Adam Driver, whose Beauty and the Bastard romance with Marion Cotillard's opera singer ends in tragedy, then restarts in weirdness, then ends in a bigger tragedy. It's Annette, it's quite the ride, and we watched this at the cinema, didn't we?
Yeah, it was really good to catch it on the big screen. Frankly, it was
Yeah.
I think I'm sort of losing track of when it was. I think it was a big release week, wasn't it? It was sort of like we were lucky to see it locally without having to make a 40-mile round trip.
Yes, yeah.
I was going to say it was a packed out screen as well, wasn't it? It was obviously highly in demand. Oh wait, no, it wasn't. It was just us, pretty much.
It did prove that the audience in Teesside for Sparks musical from the director of Holy Motors consisted of us, really, didn't it?
Well, it's a recurring thing with Adam Driver's films this year, apparently, is that millennials don't want to go and see films. They only want to get stuff delivered to them on their phones, apparently.
That's definitely it with The Last Duel, isn't it? It's definitely not the case that the audience for a film about women's mistreatment throughout history were not happy sitting through 2.5 hours of Matt Damon and Ben Affleck.
That's true. That's fair enough. I mean, the marketing was terrible, but truly, if you only want to see one film this year about Adam Driver being a horrible, abusive bastard, Annette is you.
It absolutely is, yes. So I don't know. We could do a plot synopsis for this because, unlike Holy Motors, it is reasonably linear.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the big thing that jumps out to me in difference to, like, I went back and had another watch of Holy Motors the other night, and yeah, it's his first English language film as well. It's a film of firsts for the director for Sparks getting their first musical on screen and stuff. But then it is by the standards of Holy Motors, but then anything looks sort of like kind of linear and a bit more mainstream by comparison. Yeah, mainstream's not the word, but linear would be that, right?
Yeah, it's fair enough. I've been tracking this thing throughout its long development process. It always had Driver attached. There was a time when this was going to co-star Rooney Mara and Rihanna.
Right. They were both of them rather than in the lead?
Both of them. Yeah, both of them were going to be in it. The female lead,
cool.
the role played by Cotillard, went through Rooney Mara and Michelle Williams' hands. But there was apparently a time when the Hyperbole performance was going to be Baby Annette featuring Rihanna.
Oh, right, I see. Yeah, fair enough. If I was going to be the singing voice or something, that would have been wild.
Yes.
Yeah, I did hear about the Michelle Williams thing. It's been sort of delayed a couple of times, hasn't it? Not least obviously by the state of things just throughout the world.
The whole thing, yes, yeah. It was one of the films that was going to premiere at the 2020 Cannes Film Festival, and I think with some of the films from the 2020 Cannes Film Festival, they just gave them the laurels and allowed them to premiere elsewhere. Like most obviously with Steve McQueen's Mangrove, which couldn't wait for the 2021 festival because it had to be on BBC One at some point. But I think this one did end up at the 2021 Cannes Film Festival. It did have that premiere.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's just been a long time coming. I mean, the other thing I've ended up watching in preparation for this podcast, because it's turned out to be a big year for Sparks movies. I went and watched
Hasn't
Edgar
just.
Wright's documentary, The Sparks Brothers. Yeah, did you end up catching up with Sparks Brothers?
I don't. I have it penciled in for the Christmas holidays, but I haven't caught it yet.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good treat, I would say. It's a good treat for the Christmas holidays. Yeah, I've really enjoyed it. But in that, just as background to this, they've talked about a couple of times where they almost got musicals off the ground. Like they were going to get to make a film with Jacques Tati at one point,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
then like much later on, Tim Burton at that stage in the 90s, where Tim Burton was attached to a lot of projects that Superman Lives film just didn't end up happening. But they were going to make a musical with Tim Burton called My the Psychic Girl. They get into that in the film as well, and the disappointments and the letdowns of having put the work in and the film's not getting made. So it in retrospect makes Annette even more of a joy, really.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Because there's like, when you know Sparks' history on the big screen, you can see traces of the other things that they've done throughout it. They released a radio play called The Seduction of Ingmar Bergman, which was a sort of comic fantasy about Ingmar Bergman going to Hollywood and being tempted to sell out. And I think that theme of artistic purity versus the marketplace is all over this film as well.
Yeah, it's I mean, in the contrast, you mentioned one of my favorite bits, and is the line just "Beauty and the Bastard" and like the spoof showbiz news segments they've got there. It's like I've seen reviews compare this to like A Star Is Born, and sort of see that on the surface level of it's about a couple and one of them's declining and one of them's on the rise. The difference is one of them's declining because he's a fucking bastard. He's just and you know what? It's one of the most perfectly drawn, aspects I think of this film is that Adam Driver is instantly recognizable as this, self-loathing and loathsome, but more loathsome guy. You can just imagine having a Netflix special called "Cancelled." Like this is a title next to his smug, fucking nonplussed, shruggy face. He says at some point in this that like he does comedy because it's the only way you can tell the truth without getting killed. And yeah, what a prick! Like what a line! It just tells you everything about it. Yeah, I would say haven't seen The Last Duel. That film turns this aspect of him to good use as well. But he's just as ridiculous. he's very watchable, playing unlikable.
I am a member of the Facebook group Society for the Toleration of Nathan Rabin, about the titular critic, and there was a post in there that said, "Oh man, it's a great idea to cast Adam Driver as a stand-up comedian because that guy just looks like he's going to crack you up any second." At which point someone did correctly point out that Kylo Ren has, and I quote, "big 20-something male comedian on a podcast about cancel culture energy."
Yeah, it's this thing that a lot of the 20-something males who didn't like those Star Wars sequels don't seem to get about those things. Is that the bad guys are neo-Nazi cosplayers of the villains from the original films, and that's pretty much all there is to it. But yeah, so this film immediately sets up this contrast of this. I'm trying to think of any of the things John Oliver says about him, physically. A rudely large man, let's say. He's a rudely large man who's going out with this saint of a woman who, in contrast, while he says it's the only way to tell the truth without getting killed. Marion Cotillard is this opera singer who is every night, as he puts it, always dying and bowing and dying and bowing. And it's this immediate setup of complete artifice and pretension versus beauty. And
yes,
I mean, Beauty and the Bastard. I'm taking a long walk for the short thing of Beauty and the Bastard. But there's
another contrast they set up which is that, as you say, Cotillard's character dies and dies and dies every night, whereas Driver's character kills and kills and kills.
Yeah,
which becomes a bit. He does. He really does.
Yeah, they sure do.
He reminded me a bit of, there's a very early Adam Buxton podcast where he does a parody of one of those kind of WTF with Mark Maron style American podcasts at the end. and it's
Yeah.
the American stand-up guy man who had one experience where he thought he'd killed it at a concert, but in fact he'd crushed it instead.
Yeah, very much. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the show, the Ape of God show that gets put on, and people just laughing in his utter contempt for people.
Yeah.
You know, it's there in the show to start with. You know, is that self-loathing people, you know, will not accept love. So that obviously transfers over to the relationship as well. But the glowering contempt for his audience just it rings true, and it's like, how are there so many people who like this shit like in real life? Is my question.
Well, there's a kind of inverted commas thing into it, isn't there? Isn't in that you never feel sure that you were seeing Henry's actual stand-up so much as you are seeing a semi-musical number about being a stand-up comedian. So it nimbly gets past that problem where you're writing a character who's a stand-up comedian and you realize you have to write actual funny material for them. But in this one, you kind of don't.
Yeah, that's true. It does, you know, as cinematic as it is, it is playing with those. It does that thing that some screen musicals do of like playing up the theatricality and the artifice, like the sort of like, well, you know, it starts with it leading you right under the proscenium, doesn't it? With the, you know, the opening number being an out of character, similar to Holy Motors, like sort of leading you into the film.
Yes, we should talk about that because that's a great sequence. It begins by telling you not to breathe or fart for the duration of this 140-minute film, which is tall order, but I managed it.
Yeah. Breathing will not be tolerated. So take a deep last breath right now, please.
And I was like satisfied straight away by that because before the opening credits have even come up, you know, you've seen something that only Leos Carax would do.
Yeah, it's a stunning like open up into it. It's you know, like I don't have like a massive amount of familiarity with Sparks. Like certainly the Sparks Brothers documentary is the most comprehensive because it is literally a blow by blow, step by step rundown of the history. But the songs I know I like, and it's as soon as you jump into So May We Start, which is the first song, and it's got that sort of like the you know, the repeat phrase. It does the same throughout the rest of the songbook for the film as well. But it's such a, you know, as people have said, like a lot of people saw this like in press screenings or whatever the first time after cinemas reopening again this year, and it's just like, oh, cinema is back. You know, it's that kind of incredible open up into it. But yeah, you get that's the first of a couple of cameos by Ron and Russell Mael in that first scene, and you also get Carax and of course the actors like out of character, sort of like walking into it, putting on wigs and things, like kind of going from a studio out into the world.
It's kind of like a reverse curtain call, isn't it? You see everyone out of character sort of getting ready for things before you see them as the people they'll be playing. Yes, it's got several other fascinating elements. I mean, So May We Start was released ahead of the soundtrack's release, and it's up there with You Used to Laugh as one of the more sort of rock-driven songs in it. It sounds like you would expect Sparks to, and I think one of the strengths of Sparks in recent years, when you look at albums like Hippopotamus and A Steady Drip Drip Drip, is that they have been comfortable returning to their old sound in a way that doesn't sound like an admission of defeat. They genuinely sound like that old glam pop sound is actually offering them significant inspiration at the moment.
Yeah, it's it's just covered in the thing as well. It's that it's coming up on over 50 years now, isn't it, of them just reinventing themselves up until that kind of like the sort of resurgence they've had in recent years. Like they did I forgot, I saw this when it happened, like when it actually happened a few years ago, and then forgot that it happened completely until it came up in the film, in the Sparks Brothers. But the Franz Ferdinand supergroup thing was sort of a weird kind of step, which, you know, they sort of mentioned in that like, you know, the first song they sent to Franz Ferdinand was "Collaborations Don't Work." Like, so it's sort of like, right, it has to be pushing football. I know what you mean. Yeah, it's got that. It's sort of coming back around to it.
Yeah.
Certainly, like in this, it's like a big mix of, you know, throughout the songbook, the different songs. There's is it My Baby's Taking Me Home? Is the song that's just that lyric? That's okay. Is it My Baby's Taking Me Home? Yes, but there's a lot of that kind of like sort of the way the lyrics go in this. You know,
The mantra
there's a
kind
song in
of.
this We Love Each. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like so maybe start has it a bit, but then has verse as well. But like we love each other so much as a refrain in that song. That's
Yeah.
just again that contrast between them two, like as performers and as people, where they're coming from. It's like it's ironic and not, because she means it. And it's not really clear from his. I'm not sure he's sincere in anything really, that character.
It's interesting that, isn't it? Because I think the reaction we both had when we first saw this was not just that it was more linear than we expected, but that it was far, far more sincere.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tonal like tightrope really in this, because I think a slip in either direction just makes this like Lemony Snicket. It's like, you know, it's about a dastardly performer turning a crime and exploitation to try and build a star off of children, and we'll get to that aspect of the plot, because I realise I've jumped the gun on it a little bit, but yeah, that's truly what works about it, is that it is funny and it has its funny bits, but the sincerity is what swings it, is what really makes it special.
Yeah, absolutely. And I saw this the second time at the Ark in Stockton, and when we left the cinema, I remember the usher, the person who like led us in and took our tickets, was literally in tears at the end of it, which I thought, I mean, that's when you know a film works, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's the main thing that came from me, is I was unexpectedly moved by it. Like as much as I sort of like went in with kind of, I hadn't really watched any trailers. I knew the basics. I knew there was Adam Driver. I knew there was Sparks. I knew it was Leos Carax and stuff. So it's kind of like expectations are right in the middle really, and just didn't expect as it was going along to be as moved by the end and other parts of it as I was. The just in terms of the plot, because I know we said we could do a plot now, so we're doing an oddly non-linear review of this more linear.
Yeah.
I think we were more linear with Holy Motors.
We're doing the traditionally Carax version of this, I think.
Yeah. So anyway, now I'm dressed as a goblin, and let's talk about so the couple who are kind of like all this Beauty and the Bastard type stuff. They're in the spotlight of showbiz news segments that keep popping up throughout the film, and soon enough they have a kid. They have Annette, who is portrayed in the film by a marionette,
which is a great pun, by the way. Marion Cotillard gives birth to Annette, who is a marionette. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. On top of that, her name's Anne as well. But yeah, Marionette. God, I didn't clock that till now. But yeah, yeah. So it's like So when we were talking about, you know, the sincerity of it, like that's an important thing. We're burying the lead a little to say that the title character is played by a marionette, and that it's still as sincere and moving as you know, the fact that you have that. It's as if like my read of it is that the daughter is as artificial as him and as beautiful as her, really.
Yeah, and the trailer kind of buries this a bit, which I thought was strange, because I mean I was excited enough for it when I heard it was a Sparks musical from the director of Holy Motors, starring Adam Driver and Marion Cotillard. But if you told me there'd be puppetry in it, I'd be even more excited than that.
It's just, it asks for the Muppet version of this movie.
It's like the reverse.
But if you
isn't it?
Yeah, but if you do it now, you have to. Yeah, it is a reverse Muppet movie. If they adapted it now, they'd have to do it the other way around.
Yeah.
Michael Caine is Baby Annette. No, but yeah, you have this couple and their terrible sort of graceful, sadistic back and forths. That really just starts to sour when the kid arrives and when the whole Star is Born interplay starts coming. That he starts to decline because he's a shit, and she starts to go up because she's great. And on the offside of this, you've got Simon Helberg as the accompanist, who kind of looks on jealously at their relationship and has a really interesting role throughout. I thought he was amazing in this. Like, I've never been a huge fan of Simon Helberg, but how about you?
We had a bit of a debate about Simon Helberg afterwards, because I have to admit my only familiarity with The Big Bang Theory is occasionally like walking through the living room when my dad's watching this. But every time he's popped up in a film, I've always been struck by the almost kind of Gene Wilder-ish comic gracefulness he has. I mean, his pratfalls in Florence Foster Jenkins of like ballet, they're incredible. I think whatever you think of his big successful sitcom role, he is a really remarkable comic performer, in my opinion.
Yeah, he was. I mean, I'll be honest. I'm called against him not because of the Big Bang Theory, but because I saw this dreadful film that he directed called "We'll Never Have Paris," which is this utter rank. I mean, the Adam Driver character in this would love it, or make it possibly. I'm not sure, but he made this like really really terrible film. And then I'd forgotten he was in Florence Foster Jenkins, and I thought he was a revelation in this. I thought he was really good. There's this running thing where it's he starts as an accompanist, so he's on the piano singing about what he's going to do, and then later on it sort of comes back to him as a conductor, and the way Carrick shoots it, there's a sort of like there's a revolving like panning shot around him as he's doing the thing, and as it goes to go behind him, he's like, "Excuse me 1 second," and he just conducts. It's almost like spoken word with. Yeah, and and it ramps up with his performance as well. It's like one of the scenes of the year to me. It's like one of the things that stuck with me ever since I saw it. I haven't really stopped thinking about it.
It's a brilliant moment, and I think when I've seen people who disliked the film, and I have seen people who dislike the film because it's a Leos Carax film, it's going to be a love it or hate it thing. They have generally singled out that one scene with Helberg as one of the high points for them, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, I did like this, and there are other great moments in it as well. I mean, the midpoint of the film, which is kind of I kind of get why the trailers were burying the lead onto this. Full spoilers, by the way, this is quite a recent film, listeners. So if you haven't guessed by this point, you do need to go watch the film. Breathing will not be tolerated, and also go watch the film. But the midpoint, the storm sequence that ends with Marion Cotillard dying.
Yes,
it sort of pivots upon that point, because then afterwards, the marionette, their daughter Annette is basically then haunted or possessed of the voice of her dead mother, like where the full-on fairy tale magical aspect comes in.
Yeah, that's a really interesting development, and I mean, in fact, the entire reason why Annette is a puppet just comes from the sort of practicality of it, that Carax wasn't particularly interested in working with a child actor. And the character of Annette has to do all of these remarkable things, has to stand on stage and sing arias, has to be sat on by Adam Driver by accident, has to grow up visibly throughout the film. You can see why it seemed like a more pragmatic thing to make this ostensibly sort of bizarre decision.
Yeah, like I mean, it works completely as the thing. You buy into, as much as it's like, oh, that's a marionette on first sight. It's like, it plays out wonderfully. And by the end, they've come around to a different thing about what that means. It gives you like a different reading of it, I think. But yeah, it's it obviously, other than the most literal version, obviously, is that once her dad realizes that she has that voice, that highly monetizable voice, because he's a shit, he goes and monetizes it. He basically tries to launch her as a singing star,
and that leads up to that extraordinary like performance at the stand-in that they have for the Super Bowl, which begins with, and again, this is another reason why I'm very glad they didn't use child actors for this, which begins with baby Annette being lowered onto an enormous platform by drone, which is a hilarious image, I think.
Yeah, because it's a thing of because you buy that character even though it's not played by an actual actor, so it's a thing of looking like, oh no, oh god no. But it has I mean, it has its funny bits all the way through, but the sincerity is important. But it does have one of the funniest lines and line deliveries of the film in that bit. Where it's like, "Please be patient. Baby Annette is, after all, a baby."
Yes.
It's wild obviousness, but it's so well. It's very well done. I think the showbiz like satire, as I say, all those news segments that pop up sporadically through the first half, and then just the depths of the second half.
I mean, that is ingenious, that the showbiz news segments where they have these little TMZ style clips of Henry and Anne, and it's done. It's fully sung. You know, this is the Greek chorus, and it's a showbiz news website. I think that's really clever and funny.
Yeah, it's the best version of that sort of like idea since Pop Star, Never Stop, Never Stop.
Yes.
Like, it doesn't quite need Will Arnett drinking from bigger and bigger cups every time it comes back around. It's funny enough on its own.
Yes, yeah. So we should talk a bit about Sparks as a band. There are a few references in here other than the references to various film projects. I mean, I know My the Psychic Girl was going to be based off a manga. I haven't read that manga, but would it be fair to assume that this story about a baby girl with extraordinary powers is a bit of an exorcism of that experience?
Yeah, I mean, things could have been repurposed from that possibly. I think because it wasn't that Carrick's came to the Mill brothers with this, like this, that they came up with this script and sent it to him, having admired Holy Motors, and over a process of, as you say, many years, it ended up coming around. He said, "I wanted to direct this." So I think that there's a push and pull between them in the film, but then the sort of concept album songbook at the center of it is what drives it all the same.
Well, yeah, literally, because according to the Mail brothers, when they started work on this previously, when they've been involved with something like My the Psychic Girl or Confusion, the Jacques Tati project, they've been brought on by a director to a script of an idea that already exists. And this was the first time they'd had to sit down and write a story from scratch. And by their own admission, they didn't really know how to write a script. So the first thing they sent Carax was just the soundtrack album. And they said, well, we don't know how clear this is to you, but this is basically the script.
Imagine joining those dots. I've re-listened to the album this morning. Yeah, it's like, I mean, haven't seen the film yet, but it's a terrific. It works just as an album, I would say.
I think so.
I mean, it's maybe not. Yeah, I was going to say about the album, like if you just viewed it as an album, no film attached to it, I think "Girl from the Middle of Nowhere" is the likely like single from it. I would say maybe.
That's a good call. Yeah, I like that song very much and think it's staged very well in the film because it's so matter of fact. It's certainly the first time I've seen someone go to the toilet during a musical number. I'll say that.
Just throw me under the bus there. Was it? Did I go to the toilet?
No.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say we said I'm the only one there. I was just. Oh my gosh! Yes.
Yeah. I think that there are a few instances of singing in unusual circumstances. The one that attracted most attention when it was at Cannes is the singing cunnilingus scene, which is, I mean, it's brief.
It's maybe unique.
It's brief. I can see why it attracted a bit of attention.
Yeah. It became a headline thing, certainly. As I said, I kept my head down and didn't find out much about this film, but it was certainly the headlines of Adam Driver sings while performing oral sex in Annette. It's like, well, I guess it's because it's a showbiz news story. I suppose you have to just throw that out there as a plot detail of this film. As a marketing ploy, it's better than anything The Last Duel got. John Oliver will have booked his ticket right away.
Yes. But yeah, there's as you say, there's a few Sparks cameos. They appear on screen in So May We Start, which, as we've noted, is meant to be like a sort of reverse curtain call where you see the people involved in the film coming together before the story starts. So that's expected. But we get a bit more Ron and Russell, don't we, during the film? Should we say where, or do you think our listeners will enjoy spotting them?
Yeah, I think it's just, I mean, I recognised them more from having seen them at the beginning, and then when they popped up again later, I think let the listeners spot them if they haven't.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen it yet, I mean, you should have seen it by now. But if you go and rewatch it, then yeah, go have a look, because I think it's pertinent where they pop up as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but
yes.
But as I was saying, like the thing of like my baby's taking me home style repetition and stuff like that. You know, we love each other so much, we love each other so much, we love each other so much, we love each other so much is basically the entire lyric of the song called "We Love Each Other So Much." And it's a thing where, honestly, when it first happened, that song first starts, I wasn't really with it. And it is a thing I think of Sparks as songs that do the repetition thing. It's like, it doesn't get better as it goes on. It's so like, if not catchy, then in the purpose of, you know, this in the framing of this like rock opera setting, it just sort of beats a tattoo on the inside of your skull, and it works for like the mood that it's setting up for those two characters for that relationship. It's so effective, where on the surface of it, it is them sort of like singing a bit, like, on his part, a bit monotonously, "We love each other." You know, it does a lot with just that.
He sings well, but he sings like you would imagine Adam Driver would sing. I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, I think his last couple of roles have been trying to convince us he can do accent, and he just sort of sounds like this. No matter what he does, he sounds like this. I am a French nobleman. I am a member of the Gucci family.
Yes.
Outer space.
I mean, we mock that House of Gucci.
It's a good voice. I'd stick with it.
Yeah, but it was pointed out, someone pointed out on Twitter, that Adam Driver is the only person in House of Gucci who hasn't based his performance on Wario.
Oh, that was like the first time I'd seen any trailer, so that was before we saw Annette, and it was just alarming. I don't know it was coming. I mean, you were there, you know, and there was only us in the cinema. When Jared Leto first appeared, I just went, "Oh, fuck off."
As I said to you back,
anyway, not to go off.
I would just love to be in Ridley Scott's head, where he thought, I know, I'll take an actor where there hasn't really been anything high profile against him, but there's a lot of disquieting rumors about him, and I'll put him in big chunky old man makeup that doesn't look at all convincing. I can't imagine how this could go wrong again.
Yeah. Calling Christopher Plummer. Maybe rest in peace. Yeah. So anyway, not to get off topic, because I'm really spending the rest of this year concentrating really hard on not accidentally seeing House of Gucci at some point. But yeah, with this, I think the songs are terrific. It's like, it's got that thing at the top. It gives you one expectation, and I think it does go all over the shop in terms of the style throughout. You know, it's always recognizably Sparks, but you know, it's songs that work as both big. I mean, like so many of their songs, both sad and funny.
Yeah.
I would say, like, and always catchy.
Yeah, I think for all, if I was to compare it to another Sparks album, it's at that sort of little Beethoven end of their repertoire, where it is a bit further away from pop, a bit more repetitive and minimalist. But again, as you say, they are maddeningly catchy songs. That's the one thing they can't suppress, even when they try and make like as extreme an art album as they possibly can. They still have a real gift for an infectious melody.
Yeah, I mean, you were talking about them going back over to, like, you know, past styles rather than constantly reinventing. Just the fact that it's the songbook for a movie musical is, I think, the invention. And it's just a shame that, like, watching it, thinking, I want 8 more of these. Like, I want 8 more original Sparks musicals. That'd be great. But they probably won't. They'll do something else brand new.
Yeah.
Instead.
Yeah. I think they have said that they have other ideas for films, so we'll see. It could yet happen. But But
Yeah.
if this is the only one, the wonder of it is that it feels like something that was worth waiting 45 years for, which is roughly how long it's been since that Jacques Tati project was announced.
Yeah. And in between, there's they covered this. It just made me laugh that they mentioned you mentioned Adam Buxton earlier on. He's in the Sparks Brothers talking about Roller Coaster, and that he thought Sparks was just a band that was made up for the movie. They were in this disaster movie called Roller Coaster. And that was it. Like, so instead of they do like live performance in this, which until you see the clips of the film, you think, how can you really do a whole disaster movie about one roller coaster? Like, does it not? Is there not really only one thing it can do, which is go off the tracks? So they've had this thing where, like, they thought that would launch them. Like, there's various points throughout the film and throughout their career, because obviously it's a chart and the whole thing, but they said they thought this would launch, and this would be the thing that makes them commercially popular, as well as, without them having to change their own thing. And they have stuck to their guns all the way through.
Yeah.
And, I think, maybe in their own history, it's just a thing of we're going through another moment where it's like, oh, Sparks, and maybe like the next thing they do won't be as popular, but they'll be along again in a few years. Like, I think whatever they do next, whatever. Yeah. And, whatever they do in between will probably be great as well.
Yeah.
It just might not connect.
There is a credit at the end of it. When we're talking about which styles they're revisiting, there is a credit at the end of it, which is something like lyrics by Ron and Russell Mael and El Carax or something like that. And I know that Carax helped them work on the script and get it into a sort of filmic format. But I would like to think that when the movie incorporates snippets of songs from propaganda and things like that, that's Carax. That is absolutely Leos Carax, Sparks fanboy, saying, oh, you've got to have a bit of rock in here. I can't make the movie if it's not going to have rock in some form.
Yeah, just put your foot down there. That's the line.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like Henry and Dan, in the film, Sparks and Carax is a match made somewhere, but it works out. It's like the results of that collaboration, you're not going to forget in a hurry.
The collaboration does work, contrary to their own song.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing about Carax's work on it is when we reviewed Holy Motors, we talked a bit about his sort of personal history and how that was present even in a film which seems completely fantastical like Holy Motors. And that's there again. Yeah. The girl he's with at the start is his own daughter. And I think that theme of sort of fathers and daughters trying to navigate the art industry probably appealed to him because of that, really.
Yeah, I was thinking about that, especially like with the framing of that last scene of what he has to say about fathers and daughters, and especially where Annette ends up, I would say, like by the end of that.
Yeah,
it is interesting. I mean, because it's in the same ways there's the scenes. There are scenes in Holy Motors that are autobiographical. Yeah, it stands out. It's sort of it just kind of makes you sad, but that is the desired effect. Yeah, it's all extra context in there that really makes that. Yeah,
I think in Holy Motors it feels more subtextual because the story of it is so outrageous, whereas in this, I mean, if you do know that's his daughter at the start, great. If you don't, it's there for a second and it doesn't matter. And after that, the emotion of that is channeled into the story itself, which, as we've noted, is much more directly emotive than you might expect from either Carax or Sparks.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, a tonal tightrope, because really, either direction, this could have been a worse film than it is. I think it is instantly the stuff that like cult classics are made of, which is what else would you want from a musical with songs by Sparks? Like, it would have to be, it would have to be, it would have to be somewhere down this line. It's as weird and wonderful as you want it to be. I would say.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I'm really looking forward to watching the Sparks Brothers. Your description of it makes it sound a bit like I watched that film Six by Sondheim recently for fairly
All right.
obvious reasons.
Yeah.
And you could make a potentially fatal drinking game from taking a sip every time Sondheim says. And obviously, at the time, this was a massive flop.
Yeah, I mean, there's an aspect of that because it is, as I say, it's blow by blow. It's every, from their early life through album by album, more or less. Like skips over a couple of steps maybe, but like it's a full comprehensive sort of talking heads history. It's not the sort of thing. I've made the joke on this podcast before of like music documentaries having a Kickstarter to get that clip of Dave Grohl saying, "What you have to understand is at the time nobody had ever heard anything like this." It's a lot of people, it's a lot of fans all involved in it. Like you said about, if Carax said, "Oh no, you have to put this one. I'm not making the film if we don't have this." You feel like Wright has sort of like it's 2 hour 20-minute film, but it's so enjoyable to watch them talk about it, to watch fans talk about it, that it propels along. I think you're in for a treat when you get around to watching it. It's really good.
Absolutely, yeah. We mentioned that it was in competition at Cannes. Certain aspects of it, including certain aspects of it, including, I'm glad to say, the song "So May We Start" are being pushed for Oscar consideration, but it has also got probably the accolade it most deserves already, which is that it is number 1 in John Waters' list of favourite films of 2021. Would you like to hear his comment?
No higher honour.
No,
Go for it.
Yeah. The best movie of the year is an insane, over-the-top and thankfully self-indulgent Sparks Brothers musical about an angry macho performance artist, his opera diva girlfriend, and their daughter who is somehow born a puppet. See it by yourself so no one you know can possibly ruin this nutcase masterpiece. Oh yes, it's really long.
Says it all, really.
Yeah, fair, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. On the Oscars thing, as I said, like Girl from the Middle of Nowhere would probably be a good performance thing, but you sort of want them. It would be wasted on them starting the 4-hour-long televised ceremony with "So May We Start." But in all honesty, it's not a Bond song. It's not from a Disney film, and it's not on the end credits of another nominee, so it's got no shout in the Oscar. As much as I would love Ron and Russell Mael to get up and have won an Oscar, I don't think it's going to happen. I mean, we've got to do what we've got to look forward to is the ignominy of Annette being nominated for Best Musical or Comedy by the Golden Globes.
No, they'll get it wrong. The Best Musical or Comedy is traditionally full of things that are neither musicals nor comedies. This will be done.
Yeah,
for,
it'll be
like,
that
best
Last
drama.
Night in Soho.
Yeah. Yes.
Ludicrous.
I think the only other Oscar category that's open in Best Original Song is when there's like a documentary and the end credits have a song called something like "We Need to Change Whatever It Is This Documentary Is About."
See, that's how Sparks could win an Oscar, because I bet that would be amazing. We need to change, open bracket, whatever this documentary is about, close bracket, by Ron and Russell Mael. on the end of whichever documentary is out next year. Perfect. Yeah, that's how they do it.
If you're watching this, Alex Gibney, the ball's in your court. So, any closing thoughts about either Annette or Sparks before we wrap up?
Only that, I mean, I'm going to get around to rewatching Annette over Christmas. You're going to watch the Sparks Brothers over Christmas. I'm going to rewatch Annette. I did watch Sparks Brothers with my partner, who was unsure even about an hour and a half into it. She was kind of like, is this a mockumentary though? Like, are these real? Because it almost plays it's like that sort of do you remember that Peter Jackson sort of like short documentary that's like a Colin Mackenzie who like invented color cinema, sound cinema, and is as revolutionary as he is completely made up. That's it. Yeah, Forgotten Silver. Yeah, so it could as equally be that, because the story is as wild and as interesting and as fun as all of their songs are really. It is experimental all the way along. There's loads of it for me to dive back into. Like there's loads of albums. I feel like I might go through album by album in order and just get a better appreciation of it. Because, as I say, I would love to see more movie musicals by them. But if this is it, then it's a really great outing.
Yeah, absolutely. And for us this week, that is it. If you enjoyed the show, you can donate to our Patreon, www.patreon.com/The Geek Show, where you get my twice weekly reviews of classic Doctor Who. You get our other movie podcast, Director's Lottery, and you get a monthly bonus episode of this very show, which this month I am delighted to say is about the 29 musical object. I don't know if you can describe it any more clearly than that. It's about cats, basically. It's about cats.
Oh dear.
Hal, it's about cats. Yes.
I mean, that's most of the lyrics as well. It's about cats, all right. Cat's not a dog. All right, I'm gonna vamoose before you try and rope me into that. Enjoy, listeners. I'm off.